Welcome to More Business, More Life TV. And today I have George and Bobi who came from our last episode, and we are going to dive deeper into how they decided to take their whole family, the Kaponay family, and leave Australia and go on an adventure. Now it's been 9 years, and they've created their own family businesses, and their kids have created businesses. And how did they overcome that decision and the fear to break out and make something like this happen? Let's find out. George, Bobi, it's great to have you back on the show. The reason I wanted you to come back on and do another episode with me is because I wanted to be able to talk a little bit more in depth about how this is. And I do want to go back in time and talk about, what made this decision. But first, maybe some of the people didn't get to see the episode that we've done before. And so for everyone out there, we did another episode with their 2 kids as well. But today, maybe just share, it's quite amazing that you've gone 9 years almost now, traveling the world with your 2 kids. So they were 10, your twin children, 10 years old, made the decision to just start traveling and just being together. Maybe let's start there with the high of this. I mean, like where you are, like and both your kids are entrepreneurial now, and they're earning money and being able to learn from anywhere in the world. This has got to feel pretty exciting to be at this moment and see your kids come to this place, right? I mean,
well, thanks again, Steve, for having us back. We really enjoyed the last opportunity, and I think it comes back to that. I think we're truly grateful for all of the experiences that have brought us to this opportunity. And I think we shared in the last time that there were many challenges that brought us to this place, and each one of those challenges were challenges that we faced together as a family. And in that process, we really were able to create our own family story. And that family story is the combination of all our desires, or the things that were really interesting for us to learn, each interwoven into what is now a collective family story. And as each strand of that story is fulfilled, thus is fulfilled the collective family story. So each one of those are working towards that, and it is gratifying and fulfilling to see that our children have pursued their passions and felt empowered enough to do that, to create what they want, and that we as a family have realized that all together in the things that we've done together. It's been great.
That's exciting. Like what would be a thing for you, Bobi, that you would have never guessed that this is, like you set on this journey, and now these like hidden gems, I guess. If you could just pick one that highlights the most that you would have never believed would have happened, that's happened because you made this choice.
I guess seeing our children, how the learning has evolved into their following their passions. When we started out, it was 2 little 10-year-olds, and we went from started out here in the US, went from one national park to the next, and so with so much
excitement,
doing the
national ranger
badges, collecting them, and just and just meeting all these people, and just seeing our children as they as they I guess the way they found their voices, found the things that they were passionate about, and how that evolved into the things that they're doing now with
And just to be able to grow up in such a way, such a dynamic way, to be able to make different decisions than a child that would be in a classroom, sitting in the same room for a whole year. They were able to see so much more, right? So I guess just on that level, and I know from our children, you can read something in a book and you can learn, and for sure, but then when you actually see the place where something took place, and then they want to actually go read about it more after that, because it's like, oh, I was there.
Yeah.
Especially with our daughter Reka, like she loves history, and the book she was reading, like she'd just constantly be reading, and then she'd say, oh, we're going to Spain, oh, we have to go to this, see this, I've read about this.
Yeah.
And it was just this whole, especially through England and Scotland and like certain places where she was just so excited, and then she was the one running through and showing us, this is what happened here, and this is the,
Yeah, definitely.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, who would have thought, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and thank you for sharing. And that's where all this excitement, and I want to talk about that more too. But I'd like to go back, because there are definitely people watching right now that might even think this is crazy. This is ridiculous. Like taking your 10-year-old kids out of school and then heading off to see the world, not knowing where you would go or how you would do this, and having moved away from having a corporate job.
Yes.
And having that stability and a house in Australia, and then head on your way. If you can go to the moments that this happened, like what, because if we zoom in on it for a moment, like what was going through your head and what was happening in your life in that micro moment to allow this decision to be possible.
Yeah. Well, Steve, for me, it was a very poignant evening actually when I came home one night. I'd had a really tough, day at work, and yes, I was earning very good money in a corporate job. Really, what people would say was at the pinnacle of my career and my effectiveness as a salesperson, as a sales manager. Which everyone would be like, "Ooh, wow, you'd hit the highs," And I came home feeling really dejected after a really bad day, thinking, my goodness, we've got, we're living this lifestyle, I've got this mortgage, I've got these bills, and even if I keep doing this, successfully for the next 5 years, I think if I had to do it for another 5 years, I might not be here. And it was a real lump in my throat, because I went to Bobi and I had to share that with her, and I was really scared or nervous. What would she say? Because some people might go, "Get yourself back in there and work harder." But Bobi just turned to me and said, "Look, this house, this lifestyle, these things, this is not what makes us up, And like a wave in that moment, it just washed over me. And I was just able to breathe, and that moment, that support was everything. I knew there could be another way, because I had somebody who was going to, listen and support and take this journey with me. And that made it all possible. That was the moment that actually flipped the switch to say there is something else that is really, really possible, and it's out there.
Yeah. Beautiful. And then, so then what happened in that moment then? So you're there working, okay, so then she gave you that support, so then did you make a decision, or you're just like, okay, I can breathe, but what did that mean when you could breathe?
Well, that very night we decided we were going to sell our house.
Oh.
And yeah,
so
absolutely.
You did make decisions.
Yeah,
right
we
away.
made the decision that
Okay.
night. It was on the market the next week. I actually searched for an estate agent that I negotiated with him what his commission would be. He was happy, we were happy, and within 3 weeks the house was sold.
Wow.
Yeah, and they wanted a quick entry into our house, so they asked, could it be 4 weeks and could we be out? And we said, yeah, we can be out in 4 weeks.
Wow.
And everything, that was the year also that Bobi also came to the realization of why are we leaving our children to other people, to being raised, the decision on homeschooling. And that very year, by the end of that year, I was laid off, and we were all together. And it rolled on from that one conscious determination and that decision to make that decision to act and to move forward. And everything else started to just complement us and flow into that area where we wanted to go.
Thank you for sharing. And so just so I can break this down, because I like to get it like nitty gritty a little bit, because if we can examine your decisions, it helps other people make decisions. So the first big chunk was selling the house,
Yes.
would you say?
Yes.
And then, so was it after that moment that you're noticing, like, why are we leaving our kids with other people, and or when did that fit in?
That might have been
A little
bit
further.
before
No, it
or
was.
after.
You were already looking into it, but it was a little further when we'd moved into the. We were renting a house, and we moved in, and you were taking them to. Wasn't it you were taking them to
It
school
was
one
still
day?
before we sold the house, I remember.
Oh, was
So
it?
it's already
Sorry.
happening.
Okay, yes.
Before
Yeah.
we sold the house, yeah. And then
So when was
just
that moment?
realising-
Yeah.
Yeah, that was what I talked about with the
On our other
raising
episode, yeah.
of the surrogating our responsibility to raising our children, you know, and just that overwhelming feeling that, you know, this isn't right, and just getting them back for us to be together and learn
Yeah.
together, and that so.
Yeah.
And then also realizing the things that we needed, you know, like we felt like owning the house. It was our second house that we
Purchased.
we purchased, and we were, you know, paying the mortgage on, and just the things that we've somehow accumulated, and just realizing that we didn't need so much stuff, you know, and just slowly giving them away or selling off things that we're finally realizing we don't need this, and just that feeling of not being held down.
And that was a physical feeling too. So as we shed those things, we actually felt physically lighter,
Right.
and our ability to think in different ways. We were surprised. We were surprised at just how much that affected our ability to see things differently.
It's so amazing. In 2013, I got the opportunity to live in Australia, and I know that was the time you were like leaving Australia. So some coincidence we were passing by, and it didn't work out. We didn't stay in Australia. We were only there about half a year, but we had sold everything in the United States, thinking that we were going to have a 5-year journey in Australia, which didn't work out. And then the little bit that we accumulated in Australia, then we had to sell again. So it was like 2 big purges.
Yeah.
And I could have been so upset and even depressed from what happened and all that, and the loss that we took from having these 2 international moves in 1 year. But I'm so grateful for exactly what you're talking about, letting go of things and realizing us being together was the most important thing, you know.
Yeah.
And so that you found this. So when you decided, you know, I don't want to not be with my children, then when you brought that back to George, and so you're already starting to make these decisions, and then that led to letting go of the house. Would that be?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And then finding ourselves that freedom of going anytime we wanted on this hike, and just the learning opportunities that came from that, and going to visiting different places around us, you know, museums, learning centres.
Yeah.
Wow.
You know, all sorts of.
So that was
just the
happening before.
possibility of-
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
No, just the possibilities we realised of how much learning can be done
Living.
out of the
Yes,
classroom.
Yeah.
absolutely. And together.
Even more. And, you know, that's the thing. I know on our last episode, I brought up Peter Gray. He talks about, you know, that's where the biggest learnings happen, right?
Yep.
You know, is living. And when you go back to the tribal days,
Yep.
you know, all of our ancestors came from some tribe somewhere, wherever you are in the world, right?
Yep.
And you know, there wasn't like an archery class for the, you know, if a child was taking a liking to archery, then they would just hang out with the tribe member that was an archer. You know, it wasn't a class. It was just like, hey, let's live, let's be. And you know, that's so it's amazing that we're rediscovering what I think our families already knew. Probably the drive within you to say, hey, this isn't right. I don't want to do it this way anymore.
Yeah.
So going back to the decision, so there you are. You've sold the house. Now you're renting a house. You've already pulled the children out of school, right?
Yeah.
And then you're having this life of just being together. And then that turns the point where you're made redundant.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was like 2008 comes along. I'm like #1 sales guy in Australia and New Zealand, and I win the lottery. They pick my name out of a hat. I'm the guy who gets let go. I'm all angry and frustrated, and then I'm sitting at home at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I notice something's different. I'm like, what is it? I went, hang on, my phone's not ringing. There's not like 10 emails I have to respond to. I don't have to rush to a meeting. And again, another breath of air sort of comes into my lungs, and I'm like, wow, I'm free.
Right.
I'm free. And yes, I was the beneficiary of my time with them, which meant I had a payout, and that gave us the opportunity to just take a breath and reassess what was really, really important for us as a couple. And Bobi said to me, why don't we go to Japan? I said, well, she said, when you first met me, you were talking about going to Japan for a year to teach English. You came and moved down to Melbourne. We never went to Japan. We travelled many different places while we were married. In fact, we had a year's honeymoon travelling when we saved up for a year and worked for and then lived overseas for a year when we were very young. And then she said, but we didn't go to Japan. So we went to Japan, and I had all these frequent flyer points, and that paid for the airfare anyway. And everything then just turned when we were in had this experience in Japan in a crystal shop, and basically decided we were going to create something that would serve our family in terms of the needs that we had, that to be together and to learn together.
Yeah, and when you say making something, that means like making a company or a business
Yes.
to have the means so that you can work together, live together, travel together.
Yep.
Just is that
That's exactly what I mean. Yeah. To create a small business, and that goes back to what Bobi was saying before. We were thinking about all of this time, what was it that we really needed? And that wasn't a question we asked before when I was caught up in the corporate world. We were accumulating all of these things, and when we shed ourselves of those things, we really got the opportunity to ask that question. Right. And then our spending was much less. And with the less
buying and
that's
collecting
right,
things,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, and we were just focusing on the things we really needed, and we learnt at that point it wasn't that much. So our costs dropped by half.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So what? And thank you for sharing all that, because those are the things you don't think about. You're just going day to day, and then you just pay what you're paying, and you don't really think those things till you realize these moments. So were there any fears or like anything that was blown up before you transitioned? I mean, because other just going into if we zoom in the moment that you're making these major decisions, right? And as a parent, do you think, oh, I'm raising my children, this could affect the rest of their life? Yeah. Did any of that show up before you made? Because I know now we're sitting here and we're like, oh my gosh, this was the right decision, and you look at the fruits of all the things that your children have. But let your mind go back to those moments, and just you share, like, for maybe one from each of you, what was there any moment where you're like, oh my gosh, am I doing the right thing, or I'm not sure, or I'm scared, or anything to share?
In myself, I felt very strong, like I had strong feelings that this is the right thing. Like we have to follow this.
Yeah.
We've got to do this. We've got to be together. This is how But from our closest family and relatives and friends, there were questions, there was questioning, and there were doubts, like, really, like it just made the moments of time where
would they make you doubt yourself, or were you so strong that you're like, you might have that opinion but I don't, or did they get in your head?
No, especially my mum.
Yeah. Your mom?
And
like she got in your head to make you doubt it. Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
So that's not what she knew. That's not what she
it's totally new.
Yeah.
So when your mom got in your head, then what happened? Then, like, how did that? Because obviously you still made this decision. So how did you overcome that?
It was difficult, but I guess we came through, as she gave us the space. She did understand, but there were phases where we went through where this all came up again, with the flares of what are you doing? You're going to ruin their future, and
Yep.
wake up, and you're in this living this
Fantasy.
Illusion,
Yeah.
fantasy, yeah.
of what this is not how normal living
Yeah.
should be, and
Yeah. Yes, you're getting all that, and then so you trusted what? You trusted inside yourself, or trusted in your family, or both, or like, how did you? I mean, were you going to George and saying, "Are we making the right decision? Are we screwing it?" Or like, what happened? Was this
we all, the children all along knew that this was happening. Like, my mum even was talking to them, saying,
Trying to influence them.
to say, we're not doing the right thing, and
Oh wow!
it was difficult. But in the end, we were together as a family, and they were just as part of the decision as we were all together, saying this is where we want to go, and this is what excites us, this is where our passions lie, and this is something we all want to do together. So, and
So you basically overrid and said, "Hey, Mom, we're going."
yeah.
Yeah. And did she just say okay at that point, or she still put up the last fight, or?
She's still putting
mean,
up the
she's
fight.
still-
Right now.
Yeah,
Oh.
even these times.
Wow.
Yeah.
There are times when
Yeah. So yeah, but you made. So could you say what was there like one thing, or like how did you move past this? At the beginning, when you made the first big leap.
it was.
We just made the
decided,
conscious
we made
choice.
The decision, and
And we
in the
followed
end,
through.
It was like, this is what we're doing. This is what we're doing. We're going to keep in touch. It's not like we'll be out of your world,
Yeah.
like we and every day there's nearly every day we still speak, and technology can be a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. Now you can video, and so
Absolutely.
much has happened in 9
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, so.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and to switch gears with the time that we have on this
Yep.
episode, what would you say, George, was in that moment? Did you have anything with all this going on? Like, was there any moments where you doubted, or like, and then how did you overcome that?
Yeah. I suppose mindful of our time, I'd say I'd reinforce what Bobi is saying, and to the people who are watching now, I would say a lot of you will be feeling it's the right choice. It's calling to you, or even if it isn't, you're considering it. Is that to keep listening to that inner voice and trusting that inner voice, and understanding that in situations like ours, where our parents didn't understand, or our friends or whatever thought we were crazy or whatever, is that that's not your burden to carry. It's the reflection of their own fears and their own upsets and their own inability to overcome those things. So if I would say anything, and this is what we did, is that we trusted in our own hearts. And yes, we made the leap, backing ourselves, in the knowledge that together as a family, while we might not know all of the answers right now, we'll figure them out as we go. But we took that first step. And if I could say anything, that's what I'd encourage people to do, to take that first step, to listen to their hearts and take that first step. Yes, then you can make a plan, then you can start to figure things out. But once you've made that conscious determination together, you can appreciate that it's nobody else's a decision to make, and you can confidently make that decision, and good things will come from that.
Right. It's a truth. Somehow we already know where we're supposed to go, and the other people aren't telling us these things to ruin our dreams. They really believe that they know best only by what they know. Like they just know a life. Like you said, it's not normal, she's saying, but that's normal to her.
It's well intentioned.
Yeah. So they're trying to help us. I get it, but it doesn't make it easier to make these decisions.
No.
And what an amazing thing, you know, that you've made these decisions, and now 9 years later, I mean, like, what a success to being able to travel all around the world. I mean, you know, literally. I mean,
we've
all
lived,
over Asia, Europe.
we've lived
India,
in 52 countries on 6 continents. We haven't been to Antarctica yet, but yes, and
So say that one more time: 52 countries and
6 continents. Yes, and learn to speak new languages.
How many languages between everyone?
Well,
in the
3 now that we can speak.
Yeah.
But we do make the effort everywhere we go to learn something, about how we can communicate in the language of the people wherever we do go, to provide that respect and that acknowledgement, and that we are guests in their country, and that we must respect, their cultures, their decisions, their choices.
That's beautiful. And you have a family business.
Yep.
And you also, each of your kids have their own businesses.
They do. Our daughter became one of the youngest published authors at age 14 when she released her novel, fantasy adventure novel, Dawn of the Guardian. Our son at 16, from the passions of what he'd learned from booking all our travels, started his own travel concierge service. And we now, as a family, have felt this calling so strong to help other families. We have related businesses that are helping families deepen their family connection. And it doesn't matter whether they travel or not. It's just we're helping them to live intentionally so that they can be at home with themselves, at home with their family, and at home in the world. And that's actually what we called our retreats, At Home in the World Family Retreats. Wow,
beautiful. It's so beautiful. So now, after having this experience and this reward that your family has been able to have, now you're, giving more to others and sharing your story so that others can see that they can. And that's why it's so awesome that you're on the show to share your story again to another audience. And it's when I met you, I just knew you had to be on the show because, this is exactly what this show's about. When I say more business and more life, it's, creating your abundance while you're living your life by design. And that's what you've done. You've basically turned everything upside down in a way from what previously was, and having the life by your design. You said, this is the way we want it, and we'll figure it out. And you might not have known all of the things that were going to happen, and you surely didn't know all the rewards you were going to have. But it all came about because you trusted your gut, and you went for it. And I truly believe that. Like, I always say many people build a career and then fit their life in, and I like to say, let's design our life and fit our work in. And I think that you are a prime example of that. You said, hey, we want to be together, we want to travel and learn new things together, and then we'll build businesses around that to support what we need. And that's exactly what you've done.
Yes, yep.
Yeah.
And there'll be people out there to help you. That's what we want to encourage people to say. That's why we feel so impassioned to help families, because there's always people. You don't have to look too far around you. Seek a mentor, read, find information. You'll find that first step. Just listen to your intuition and you'll find it. Came at the right time.
That's it.
Yeah.
The right people come in. They always say that the teacher appears when the student is ready.
True.
So I don't know who said that, but it's a famous line.
Yes.
But it's beautiful. Thank you so much for coming on the show. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, we're truly grateful. Thank you, Steve, for the opportunity.
It's so exciting, and I'm sure there's going to be people that want to ask questions or get in touch with you. How is best to get in touch with you, and so people can learn more what you're doing?
Thank you for asking, Steve. Yeah, like you, we're really excited about empowering people to find the things that really call to them, and as a result, we'd like to do this for families, and we're creating a site where families can come to learn together all of these sorts of topics of interest, the key questions about learning, about travel, about some aspects of business, or how you might run your business on the road, and those sorts of things. And it's in a site, or all incorporated into a site called Musely, the Muse for Your Family. And that's MUSELEY.com. And of course, we also run our family retreats in Transylvania. So that's at Home in the World Family Retreat. And that is at homeintheworldretreat.com.
Awesome. Great. Yeah, so that is wonderful, and people can get a hold of you and learn. And the fact that you're giving this back now that you've had these experiences, and awesome. So many people can learn from you.
Thank you so much, Steve.
Yeah,
Thank
it's
you.
a
Appreciate
pleasure. And
the
thank you.
opportunity, and grateful to be here with you today.
Yeah, we're learning too, because my wife and I and the kids, we've been traveling more and more, and we're figuring that out. We haven't taken the step of letting go of home, so we've kept both, but we're taking a lot of notes watching you. So thanks for coming into our world and giving us different ways to look and think about things. So appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And just want to say, people, they don't have to
Let
travel
go of
or
their
let
home.
go. They can actually, do both. Yeah. And just as long as I said, they're at home with themselves and at home with their family and at home in the world, that can be wherever they are.
I'll just say, and I know we're carrying the episode out a little longer for a second, but here, the thing that attracts me the most is I spend so much money on keeping that home base, letting go of it. I'm not saying I'm going to do it yet, but letting go of it makes actually more wealth. Like, running my businesses the way that I do, I would have, more abundance in other countries, and it would go a longer way, I guess is the way to put it.
Yes.
It's the same amount of money, but it would go longer because I would spend less.
Yes.
So we'll see.
Yeah.
Right now we've been keeping both, but again, taking notes and coming up with new ideas, and that's the whole idea of having you on the show, just so people will think differently. And I hope that you got that from this episode, and I really look forward. I do read the comments, and your questions are welcome if there are things that we can bring up in the future, or future episodes. And definitely I'd love to hear, what was the biggest valuable thing that you heard? What was the greatest value that you received from this episode? Please put that in the comments so we can understand what helps you the most. And as always, until we meet again on our next episode, remember to choose gratitude and create freedom.